I'm Val, and I'm super excited to be back to talk some more about forest ecosystems. In our last video, we talked about soil, which can determine what plants can live in an ecosystem. Do you remember what the other three laws were? Light, air, and water also determine the organisms that can live in an ecosystem. And today, that's what we're going to start to talk about. Today, we're going to start talking about the biotic parts of an ecosystem, all the living things, and we're going to start with where the energy all begins. And remember, even as we focus in on this one little part of the ecosystem, it's still connected to everything else. So think about how it might be connected to the other living and non-living parts of the forest. Do you know where all of the energy in an ecosystem comes from? The sun! As one of the laws, the sun powers the water cycle, determines the temperature of an ecosystem, but it also acts as the source of energy for all life. Animals, plants, fungi, bacteria, and even you can trace your energy back to the sun. How could that be? How can pure light and heat from the sun be turned into energy that our bodies can use? Can you think of any organisms that can make food from pure sunlight? Plants! Because plants can produce their own energy without having to eat anything else, we call them producers. Producers are usually the part of the ecosystem that we forget about, off in the background. We're more focused on the animals, probably because we're animals ourselves. But producers are absolutely amazing. They can make food from light. How's that for a superpower? Can you do that? The process that producers use to make energy is called photosynthesis. Now, that's a pretty long word, right? So let's break it down to figure out what it means. Photo means light, just like a photograph uses light to capture an image. And to synthesize something is to make. Just like a synthetic fabric is a fabric made by humans, like nylon. When we put those together, photosynthesis means making something from light. So how does photosynthesis work? If it were a recipe, photosynthesis has three main ingredients: water, light, and carbon dioxide. The water enters the plants through its roots, pulled up out of the soil. Carbon dioxide enters the plant's leaves through tiny pores called stomata. And a chemical in all of the plant's leaves called chlorophyll collects sunlight. To really understand what happens in a plant's cells during photosynthesis, we need to know a little bit about atoms. Atoms are teeny tiny particles that make up everything, from the air to plants to water, and even you and me. There are many, many different kinds of atoms, and when you put them together in different ways, you get different things. For example, you've probably heard of people refer to water as H2O. That's because water is made up of two hydrogen atoms, H2, and one oxygen atom, which is the O. If instead you just put two oxygen atoms together, you would get oxygen gas, the stuff in the air that we breathe. It's kind of like building with Legos. You have all these little blocks of different sizes and shapes, and you can build all sorts of different things depending on which ones you use and how you put them together. So that's what we're going to do to try to understand photosynthesis. We're going to say that the white Legos are oxygen, the yellow Legos are hydrogen, and the red Legos are carbon. So I'm going to put this key right here just so we can remember. During photosynthesis, the plant starts out with 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, which are 1 carbon and 2 oxygens put together, and 6 molecules of water, which are 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen put together. So carbon dioxide, it has 1 carbon and 2 oxygens, is CO2, And water, since it has 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen, is H2O. The energy from the sun, collected by the chlorophyll, causes a chemical reaction to happen between the carbon dioxide in the water that breaks their molecules apart, pulls their atoms apart, and puts them together in a different way. The new arrangement puts the atoms in the form of sugar and oxygen gas. Oxygen gas is just 2 oxygens stuck together. So we have 6 oxygen molecules. And this type of sugar, called glucose, is a whole bunch of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens all stuck together. So there's 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. When we eat plants, this sugar is what gives us energy when we break the bonds between these atoms and take it back apart. And not only do the plants make this sugar that they and the animals that eat them can use for energy, they're also making the oxygen that animals breathe. Plants aren't the only producers in the forest. Algae, some bacteria, and any organisms with chlorophyll in their cells can produce their own energy through photosynthesis as well. There are even some organisms in the ocean that can produce their own energy from chemical compounds like methane, hydrogen, or hydrogen sulfide in a process called chemosynthesis. They're producers too. While the process of photosynthesis uses 3 of the laws, light, air, and water, light from the sun is really what drives the whole process. It provides the energy to get things going, and that energy is then stored in the form of sugar. That same energy gets passed on to whatever eats the plant, including you. Without photosynthesis, we wouldn't have any energy either. Producers are the very base of the food chain in all ecosystems, because they're the only ones that can make food for themselves. All other organisms rely on them for energy, including us. How can we be stewards of these amazing and essential organisms in their forest ecosystems? One way is by making sure we help keep their habitats healthy. Not all plants are equal when it comes to their contributions to the health of the ecosystem. It's really important that an ecosystem be full of native plants, plants that grow there naturally and have been growing there for hundreds of years. The opposite of that is invasive plants, plants that humans have introduced, sometimes by accident and sometimes on purpose, maybe because we like the way they taste or the way their flowers look. Invasive plants are able to take over an ecosystem because the other organisms there aren't adapted to deal with them. Over time, they turn a complex, many-layered, many-species system into just a farm of 1 or 2 species because they crowded everything else out. We can be stewards of the forest ecosystem by removing those invasive plants and planting native ones in their place. That's something we do a lot at the Greenway Trust. And if you want to try it and come volunteer with us, check out our website at mtsgreenway.org/volunteer. Now let's do an activity to really zoom in on some of the amazing things that plants can do. Look around your home for any seeds that you can find. Maybe you have some seeds left over from starting a vegetable garden, maybe some seeds and veggie scraps from the kitchen, like a pepper or the middle of your apple. Even rice or beans laying around can work too. Those are just dried seeds. Collect 1 to 5 of every seed that you can find and put them on a plate. Then take 2 paper towels, or I'm going to use a cloth, and get them nice and wet and then wring them out. So I soaked mine underneath the sink, wrung it out, and now I have a damp bandana. Stack your paper towels together, or fold up your bandana into probably quarters, and put the seeds in a line across the middle. Then fold the paper or cloth in half so that the seeds sit in the crease. So my seeds are right down here at the fold. Take the whole thing and put it in a plastic bag. And then seal it so that the water from that paper towel or cloth can't get out. Then put it somewhere where you'll remember about it. So you could leave it on a table near your bed, you could tape it to your window like we did with the water cycle bag. Just put it somewhere where you'll remember where it is and remember to look at it. Then watch it for a few days and see which seeds sprout. If you notice that your cloth or paper towel starts to dry out, just re-wet it by dripping a little bit of water down into the bag or using a spray bottle to spray some water in there if you have one of those. While you wait for your seeds to sprout, see if you can find any seeds or seedlings at your sit spot. What do they look like? How many leaves do they have? What shape are their leaves? How much do they grow each day? Record your observations in your sit spot journal. How long did it take your seeds to sprout? Which ones sprouted first? Did the stem and root all come out in the same direction? Did they end up going in the same direction? What other observations did you make? Take some notes and share them or a photo of your experiment with us by emailing education@mtsgreenway.org, and we might share them on our social media. Don't forget to come back for our next video to learn about the next step in the energy chain, the consumers. See you next time!